Come up with 5 ingredients for landing pages, they said. 5. It's a bit like building a car with 5 parts.
Welcome to the Real eCommerce podcast, your go-to for straight talk and smart tips from the e-commerce veterans and pros.
Lucky for you, you found the lowest production quality e-commerce podcast out there. But hey, it's about the content. That's what lured you in, right? Come up with 5 ingredients for landing pages, they said. 5. It's a bit like building a car with 5 parts. And keep it actionable, they said. So basically telling me not to waffle. Hopefully, we can keep to all those things. What's right for one might not be relevant for another. So let's see what we can prioritize here. I'm bound to go over the quota, but I'll try and stick to 5. So the first one is headlines. When you're building your landing page, headlines are super important, probably the most important element on the page. It's the first thing people see. And at that point, do they decide if what you're trying to promote is right for them or not? So there's a real risk to your bounce rate here. Once they land on the page, they see your headline message. They go, is this for me? Is it targeted to me? Or actually, maybe I've come to the wrong place or the offer's not for me. And then they bounce. So whenever you create a landing page and you're playing around with the titles, it's really important to look at things like tagging it in GA and also looking at the scroll depth, because obviously if they scroll past the headline, you've engaged the audience. If they don't, that you might not have captured them with that headline. So the real risk there is to your bounce rate. Imagine the headline from a customer's perspective. It's not about we and how great our company or our product or our service is. It's connecting with the customer and connecting with their needs and thinking about their pain points from a customer's perspective. So it's more like, what can you do for me as the customer? It's selfish, so you need to think in the customer's mindset and what are you going to do for them? So let's kind of break it down. What kind of builds up or what makes a good headline? So it needs to connect with the audience. So does the message resonate with the target audience? Is it clearly defining who your offer is for and who it's not for potentially? And does it kind of make it more appealing to that target audience if you really hone in on what their needs are? Sometimes you can create a headline that stops people resonating with it, and that's a good thing because the product might not be for them. So you're really trying to kind of drill down to the target audience that you want with that single headline message. The value, what are you going to do for me effectively? So are you going to give me a discount? Are you going to save me time? Are you going to make me feel better? Here you can really define what the pain points are in your title and connect with that audience at that point. They're going to want to try and feel like there's an element of interest in your title because you want them to read on. So it needs to give that feeling of, oh, that's cool. How do they do that? And make them want to continue reading. It's very good to handle an objection. So, it's a good opportunity. Most products out there will probably have one really common objection. And if you can handle that in the title as well, then you're going to remove that objection from the customer's mind. And the last thing really is to make it memorable. So do they retain the message? If they were to bounce and go somewhere else, are they going to remember the headline of the company and come back to you? So try and make it as memorable as possible. It's a lot to get in, right? So let's have a look at some headline. And I often quite like to do headline and sub-headline structures because it gives you 2 opportunities to get those messages across. So a heading, let's look at one for like an air conditioning company. So an air conditioning retailer. I'm going to do a heading and a subheading. So the heading is "Stay cool in the office this summer and save 25% till Monday." So that's our heading. Our subheading is A-rated energy efficiency so you can chill. So the reason I've done it in that order, and if we look at some of the things that we were trying to get across in the message from what I was saying before, the heading "Stay cool in the office this summer," that's kind of like the reverse pain point of heat. So you're basically saying, you're finding it hot and frustrating in the office, but you're saying stay cool in the office this summer. So people are going, oh, that would be great, as opposed to feeling hot and sweaty like I do now. In the office itself actually helps you target your audience because you're not saying, oh, this is for home or this is for a warehouse. You're actually saying this is for office use. So if somebody comes from a home perspective, they might feel alienated by that message. But if we're really going after, with this landing page, office users, and all the content is geared around office users, then cancel out those other people that it's not relevant for. We've got an offer in there, save 25% till Monday. So that's a discount or an offer, and it's time sensitive. So, they haven't got to, forever and a day to make a decision on this. This is something that is hopefully encouraging them to move on with the sale. The subheading, A-rated energy efficiency so you can chill. Well, that's the interest part. Okay. So let's see how this works is kind of like the next step for them. Energy efficiency, great. Oh, I can chill. That would be lovely. I'd love to be able to chill in the office. So it does a couple of different things there. It creates the interest, but also creates it to be memorable as well. So it's creating a future memory in their mind. Yeah, a future memory of them chilling in the office with a nicer temperature environment. So they're already picturing themselves using the product and seeing the benefits of that product. So I think what we've got across there in the subheading is interest, and we've made it memorable. The next one, number 2, is kind of the backup for that, backup for your heading and subheading. It's the content. So you've made some pretty bold claims in your title. You now need to think about sending in like the content cavalry and backing that up. I always start with the customer's needs and pain points. So let's look at these from our example. It could be they're finding it hard to concentrate in the office. Balancing the male-female temperature equation. Let's not go into that one. That's a whole nother podcast. Keeping a constant temperature in the office might be difficult. And some might be worried about the energy usage or energy wastage. Perhaps leaving it on overnight might be a concern. So we've got some kind of pain points that we're trying to assess there, and they might resonate with our audience. So if we look at the first one, finding it hard to concentrate, this is where you can put your detective hat on a little bit. We need to go and find some things that back up our claims. I had a quick Google. Trade unions in the UK recommend a working temperature of 16 to 24 degrees. So if your office exceeds this, you could be making people uncomfortable and, ultimately unproductive. The ideal room temperature from a university study I saw said it was about 21 to 23 degrees. So how can you use this information on your product page to help address those pain points? This is where I kind of call it kind of poking the pain. We need to really put that pain point in front of the customer in a sentence like this. So are your team members melting, becoming less efficient, and taking more breaks due to the temperature environment? What is this costing you in lost productivity? So something like that, we can see what the pain point is here. We've got unproductive staff taking more breaks, being less efficient, and that is the pain point we're trying to poke at that point. You can then work on the next pain point. So this is about connecting with your audience's problems. Where there's pain, there's opportunity, and that opportunity is to sell your solution to help overcome that pain point. So don't skirt over the problem. Don't try and rush past it. We want to identify the pain, and then we want to move on to what I'd like to call is like a pain point turnaround. So this is turning the pain into a solution with your product or service. And this is the value. Where you create the value, that's where you can create the sale. So for an example, our units maintain a constant working environment at the right temperature. People feel more relaxed and can get on with their work with less to distract them. In the office environment, this can boost employee productivity by 20%, and in the long run, hopefully your profits too. So what we've done is we've taken a pain point and then we've turned our solution into the pain point turnaround and a positive, i.e. having our product could make your employee productivity 20% more. And you can do that with all of the pain points that you found for your product. There's some other considerations for the page, for the page content. So showing how easy it is to use the product or how much fun people have while using it is a really great way of showcasing your product. People avoid buying things which look confusing or difficult to use. Easy to use is kind of equal to a higher perceived value. So the easier you make your product look to use, or the more enjoyable it looks to use, people are going to see that as a higher perceived value. This is your chance to convey like lifestyle of your product, or lifestyle photography and the lifestyle that the product brings the user. Don't skimp on quality photography here. Show every angle of the product, like highlight and zoom in on key features. Show different colors, configurations, or options. Apps before and after images. If your products, if your product improves the appearance of something, they can be a really great way of showcasing how this works and how it makes that user's life better. Another thing you can do is bring urgency into this. So I'm not a big fan of the gimmicky urgency you see out there. Only 3 left, when they've got thousands in stock. Or some of the latest ones, just purchased by James in Wigan, and you think, oh, I bet James in Wigan hasn't purchased this. But you can use things like limited edition or limited bundle, discount offers, and even sometimes just a shipping cutoff might be enough to get people to cross the line and create that urgency to get them to buy. It works more on kind of impulse purchase things. If it's more of a considered purchase, the urgency element tends to not play as well with it. Other things you can use are comparison tables, as a great chance to show off your product against the competitor and educate people at the same time. You could use promises like guarantees or warranties, trials. Think about the Emma mattress, right? 100-night free trial. So you get to sleep on this mattress for 100 nights before you have to make a decision whether you want to send it back or not. Very few of these guarantees or warranties actually ever get kind of claimed. But what they do is they show off incredible confidence in your product. And they make the user feel that confidence. If I'm that confident in my product, so will you be. You could also throw in things like awards or accreditations that you've got. What you're really trying to do is build trust here with these promises. As I mentioned earlier on, handling objections, it was one of the first things I ever got taught in sales, is if you tell people their objection, they can't then use it against you. So I recently fitted a Nest heating system at home, and the retailer could say something like, you probably think this needs an electrician to install, but our device is a plug and play. Now, in my mind, I can't then go, oh, it's probably complicated to install, or I need a professional to install it because they've told me I don't. So handling that objection up front, and getting the customer to see your objection and see your answer to that objection, means you're not going to have to deal with that later down the line. When you try and quantify things, you need to make them tangible. So make facts and figures real to the user. So if you say something like, you're going to be more productive, well, how much more? If you say you're going to save time, well, why don't you quote it in how many hours you're going to save? If you say you're reducing waste, for example, well, how many kilos then am I going to, save in waste? These are all things that help people put it in perspective. I don't know if anyone's ever seen Lynn Cars, but on her site, she equates the savings that you're going to make through leasing her product or her comparison of petrol and diesel to how many Big Macs you could eat, or how many cigarettes you could smoke, or how many pints of beer you could drink. So actually, although it's a crazy website, it does actually make you bring that into a real world perspective. So think about how you make those facts and figures tangible for the audience. One thing to completely avoid, and we've mentioned these before, is pop-ups. We don't want all of a sudden on our landing page to have a distraction of a discount code or a sign up for a newsletter or refer a friend. So these are just a no-no on landing pages. The only exception is exit intent. So if you've got like one of these exit intent detectors where you can go, and when someone's going to exit the page and they're going to click the X or they're going to click the back button, if you can detect that, then that might be a good opportunity to use a pop-up. But other than that, you shouldn't have any of the other distracting ones in there. Okay, so the next one on the list is social proof or trust. So I think this is probably one of the most important things, purely because it allows the audience to see the product being used and the problem being solved. So what we see an awful lot of the time is people are actually using this too far down the page. So think about using the social proof or trust in your hero section or in your header section or above the fold, because if the person lands on the page, sees the product, sees the problems being solved, then and that's with other real users, that's going to give them that confidence that we're talking about. We need to eliminate skepticism as soon as possible. So don't wait to the end of the page to show these. You can use examples like customer reviews, before and after photos that have been generated by the customers, case studies, social integrations with things like Instagram feeds that show your product being used. Nothing is more powerful than having raving fans who want to share like overwhelming proof that your products have solved the problem for them. We're also showing the problem solved here, and that's a great thing. It's like, look, I've got this problem, and now look how great these people look with the problem solved. That's what we're trying to achieve with the social proof. Next on my list is white space. It's a quick one, really. A lack of white space makes your page harder to read. So cramming everything in just makes it more of a frustrating read for the customer. It may increase your bounce rate. If you can give that structure and break it into manageable chunks, it's going to be much nicer for the user to read. If you're identifying with the customer and trying to get that kind of me too element done, then think about them in blocks or stages. We don't want a list of 30 me too things. We might want, one block that explains one problem, another block that explains another problem, and consider that white space in between. It's like the pause and the breath when you're reading, and it's a chance for that information to sink in. So, don't cram everything in, give everything a bit of an opportunity to breathe. Last one on the list is the call to action, or sometimes I call it a CNS, which is clear next step. Your page is a complete waste of time if you're not asking the customer to do something next. How clear is it what you want people to do next? There's a kind of science behind a lot of the color choices, and I'm sure that's a whole nother thing that you can go and look into, the color of buttons. Whatever color you choose, don't use it anywhere else on the page. This is something that we want to be like a repetitive, constant color and feature and text that we see throughout that page journey that is telling the customer what we want them to do next. Don't be afraid to use multiple calls to action. Like, think of the ones higher up the page. They're the ones that are positioned next to key points of interest, or where we think the user might kind of make an impulse decision. So we're going to capitalize on the user's impulse decision there. Ones further down the page feel like more progressive next steps, but don't be afraid to have a few of them up and down the page. If you're using multiple call to action, keep the message the same, the text in the button the same to avoid any confusion, and keep the color the same. We're going to post some examples in the show notes for you to have a look at, and the things we like about them. So for now, I'll shut up, and you, go practice.
Follow the Real eCommerce podcast and visit medialounge.co.uk for more e-commerce content like this.